Hey everyone, it's Carl, and I wanted to go through an interesting setting that I have called Stingers and Spores. Now, this won't be a review, it really just kind of walk through what's in the book because Eric's not going to be with me, and I'm not going to do a review without Eric and his valuable insight. So let's just go take a look at what's in this very fascinating setting for Savage Worlds.
It's a savage world. Strangers are weird war. It's a savage world.
Hey everyone, it's Carl with Tabletop Tango. Look at the bubbles, do the stuff. We'd love your support. We'd love you to visit the site. We'd love email, whatever. It'd be fun to get. And we have a new podcast called Mastering the RPG, which is more of a general content. And that one is at masteringtherpg.com. So you can check that out as well. So what do I want to talk about? I want to talk about a setting that the folks sent to me who make this game, which I believe is called, they're called Twitchy Butcher Studios. They sent me this a while ago, and I read it. I thought it was pretty cool, kind of an interesting concept, and it's always nice to have settings that explore something different than kind of your traditional tropes. And so this one's called Stingers and Spores, and from the name, you've probably gathered that it's got some insect type vibe going, and that's exactly right. This is about a world inhabited by insects. You play insects. You can be different kind of varieties or species, and all that goes along with it. And so it's kind of a cool concept. And the question is, what's in the book? What do you get that you can look at? So the first thing in the book, as we often have in books, is kind of the background story. In their case, it's a creation myth that they talk about. And originally, there's these arthro gods that kind of brought insects into the world. Insects were more of the master of the domain. The world was theirs. And then there was the rise of the vertebrates, the bone bags. And as they took over the world, insects started falling back into more creature-like. The arthro gods kind of got pushed aside and kind of lost their influence in the world. And so the bugs became more shorter lives, smaller, and kind of the insects as we think of them as creatures today. Well, then the age of bones ended because we like to kill ourselves, and I guess that's the idea. The world has changed, and so then the arthro gods came back, and with that, the insects became again more intelligent. They became, they reached their former glory, and so they could use weapons, they could use clothing, they could create these things. Now, one of the things that the creation myth talks about is they've never really taken advantage of fire because fire is pretty bad for little insects, even bigger than little insects. It's still fire is pretty bad, and they never harnessed that. So this idea of the humans level of technology that's really been driven by the fact that you can create fire, for steam engines, for that sort of thing, never really materialized. So it's very much a low technology world. There's a lot of magic, which we'll talk about, sort of what's in there. So that's pretty cool. Then the first thing after that is we start talking about character creation. Now, character creation is pretty cool because you've got different tropes. So one of the first things you do, the first thing you do is you talk about a role in the party, and they talk about alchemist, barbarian, bugbear. So it's kind of what you're doing, and we know that's kind of that archetype type idea. But the cool thing is the second thing you get to do is you get to start choosing an insect. So now you do have these species, and insects come in a wide variety, and it's pretty cool. You can choose to be things like ants that have their own origins, have their own racial traits. They have their own variants, as you can see. Then you can also be things like bees, wasps, and hornets. So you have bees, you have hornets and wasps. They have their origins. They have their background. They have things that are interesting to them, and they even have these subtypes like the bumblebee or the murder hornet. So it's pretty cool. You can pick, a different insect you'd like to play. So maybe you can play those kind of evil wasps that are coming up from South America that are going to kill us all. Well, you can play that. That'd be kind of cool, right? And then after that, and there's beetles and there's moths, there's all sorts of stuff. And so then after that, there's this idea of then racial abilities and size. And size, again, you're talking insects, and they come in a variety sizes with respect to each other. Humans were, we've got a range, but then bugs, ants versus wasp versus a beetle, they've got a much bigger range. And so they talk about those racial attributes with respect to size. You also get to then, and they've got the insect size chart and how the bonuses work and all that good stuff. And they even have a comparison chart that shows the kinds of things that you might, what the size of these insects are relative to each other. So that's, and the images and the pictures are pretty cool. I like how they've done that. And so once you go through that, once you have sort of these interesting ideas, and I want to go back to the sort of these racial abilities. I kind of skipped over it a little bit. Well, size was one of the things, but you also have these racial abilities that you can bring onto your character, as part of the character build process, and you get 4 points, racial points, to spend on these things, and they're cool. It's like you can sting, you can have poisonous, you can have, you can be a water walker. It's cool. There's a lot of stuff there that I thought was kind of neat. So once you get the character creation done, obviously I'm not going to go through it, but there is the whole, there's gear, and again, it's simple. There's things that you can get as part of this low fantasy or, low technology kind of fantasy setting. They have a pretty robust magic section. They have some of the pretty standard backgrounds, a wizard, miracles, that sort of thing. One of the backgrounds they have that's kind of cool is alchemy, which I know there's a lot of different, there's settings as well as things that you can find on Swag that talk about alchemy and how it works. They offer their own take on it within their book. And it works, obviously it works well within the constraints of their other parts of their magic system. And that has limitations. It has power modifiers. It has everything you need to really come up. And it's pretty, what's nice is the sections are pretty robust. So they add there's advantages, there's some disadvantages. And that was one of the things that sometimes people talk about, like the base Suede, that there's not really a lot of differentiation between the different arcane backgrounds. They're all kind of generic in a sense. They don't have too many flaws or too many things that make them special. In this regard, they do a pretty good job of making this an interesting differentiation from maybe some of the other arcane backgrounds. So they have a set of arcane backgrounds. They have an interesting one, which is arcane background chirping, which is musical or sound based. I wonder what that could be kind of like. Are we talking about our bards? Sure, I think we're talking about our bards. And then they've got gifted again, where as just like in the Suede book, in the sense of they've got simplified capabilities. Like for example, they don't have backlash. It may not really be powers. It could be a technology thing or something. So, and then we've got magic. We've got miracles. So pretty standard stuff then. Now they talk about gods. They talk about things like sacrifices may require different things of their followers. And so what's nice is within their constraints of their system or their setting, they add some interesting things around that, how these arcane backgrounds work. And again, I'm not going through all of those, but they also then talk about the gods in the book, as far as the different gods, what their expectations are, what powers they allow their followers to have. So that's pretty cool. I like that they have a good variety of arcane backgrounds, especially it's a low technology setting. So obviously magic is going to be much more important from bringing capability into the system. Then they have a whole big system setting rules section, which that's totally makes sense, because this is what really makes the setting, right, is the setting rules. So they talk about flying penalties, because a lot of insects fly. They talk about how insects don't have the same kind of lungs and how that affects breathing. So they're really kind of getting in there. I won't go through the flying stuff, but one of the interesting that I found that I didn't think about, that shows that the authors are kind of thinking about what it means to be an insect. There's no falling damage really, because you've seen it, right? The bug you're trying to swat, if you miss it, it may fall, from the top of your window all the way to the floor and be completely unscathed. That's one of those things. And one of the interesting items that I found in their setting rules is this concept of a battle swarm. This is where extras come together, create a swarm, and attack as a unit. And there's benefits to that. So obviously, it says extras only. It has to be the same unit type. You need to have a number of them. But the benefits is they talk about the swarm tactics. There's improved fighting. They're hardy. They have the ability to avoid kind of critical hits because they don't have a quote unquote anatomy. They take the same number of wounds as a wild card to dissipate them. So that's pretty cool. I like that they added this little setting rule. Others may be doing something similar, but I thought this was really well done with respect to, if you think about the insect world and how swarms work. And then they talk about characters as mounts, because obviously you've got potentially large player characters that have little player characters that are going to be. When I started talking about characters as mounts, first thing I thought about was that one of those movies, bug movies, where one of them is like a big beetle and they're carrying everybody around constantly. They talk about hazards as well. And funny thing, like rain is extremely scary because water droplets compared to a insect are pretty big. So I think that's nice that they're thinking about that. Now, one of the interesting things is they added in this idea of the kind of the setting flow, where if you want to make it more kind of lighthearted, more like Saturday morning cartoon, they talk about how you might play that and how you might run. Now that you may run into humans, you will run into human technology or pop cans or something laying on the ground. So all that they walk through so that you can have a different flavor of campaign. They have a big adventure creation section. They do not have a plot point campaign, though, or a set of Savage Tales in the book. I think the pack they sent me did have some of that in it, and I apologize to the authors that I don't recall all the material in there. But so they may have a plot point campaign outside of the book, but just in the core book, there's an adventure creation piece. You pick your genre, you roll on the tables, very, very typical stuff. I skimmed it. It looked very usable, possible to come up with some interesting adventures using the adventure generator. Neat kind of thing is at the end, and as I talked about this a lot too, when you're creating adventures and you're making them interesting, they have this page on the finale. Your adventure, once it gets all done, there's a finale. Could it be a chase? It's maybe combat, but a dramatic task. It's nice that they talk about that for game masters who are just trying to understand what they can do or can't do. So good stuff. And then they've got a chapter on dark magic. I didn't really read this chapter. I think it's a game master thing to bring some evil into the world. I apologize. I really didn't get through that section or read it in depth, but it has rules around how to use that, what sorcerers look like. And it's obviously pretty cool to probably bring that to the players in a set of adventures. And since it's in the back of the book, it's obvious to me that this isn't a player facing thing. So it's something to kind of add flavor as the game progresses. Talk about NPCs. So some good, when NPCs is basically bestiary, it has a number of different creatures in it. And I found this pretty nice because sometimes books don't have a lot of, just pick it out. They talk about archetypes. And, here, for example, there's a wizard. Okay, so I can quick grab a wizard and I just have them. I can use them. Obviously I might have to, pick out what powers they have and that sort of thing, but it's just ready to go. So I thought that was nice that they did that. And obviously other settings do it as well, but I'm walking through this one and letting you know that they do have a good section on that. City bugs, country bugs, courtly bugs. That's pretty cool. So I think that's, well, I guess I was wrong. They have truly a bestiary. I thought of these, different creatures that they had there. I guess those are all archetypes you can pull from, but then of course looks like they have creatures as well, giant scorpions, small scorpions, so things that you would run into as a bug that might be scary to you. So pretty cool. So I don't know if I'll go. There's a lot here. I mean, some settings they have a bestiary, and in this case, this one has a bestiary and a set of these different NPC type characters that you can pull from, which you could see as I just scroll through it. There's a big sections, so there's a lot there that you can pull from. Some settings, pretty minor. They don't have much of a set of creatures that you can pull from into your own adventures. So pretty nice. So I don't know. I won't go much further into it. I think this pretty much hits the highlights. So from a walkthrough, went through it pretty quick, but it's got an interesting story or background. Kind of cool. I like that. I love that you can have these player character races that are different kinds of bugs, which have different sizes. They have different things that make them interesting. So it's more like a sci-fi thing with a lot of different species from different planets, in the sense that even though they're all on this planet, you've got a wide range of just baseline that you can use, which is pretty cool. I like that. And then they have, a rich set of arcane backgrounds that you can take advantage of. I thought the Alchemist was kind of cool. There's a really good set of setting rules that give good flavor to what it means to be kind of a bug in a bug's life. And so I thought the setting was pretty cool. Again, it's not a review. I read through it. I picked out some of the things I thought were kind of cool. And I said, yeah, this was kind of neat to play. Obviously, it's not probably a campaign I would typically do, but it would be super cool. You could play a campaign, but it'd be super cool for a one shot. Just think about, different players playing these different kinds of creatures with different, strengths and weaknesses. And, they're going up against maybe that Saturday morning cartoon that they're going against the humans in some shape or form. I mean, we've seen the movies. We can like put ourselves into that mindset, I think, because of all these, ants and Bugs Life and stuff kind of movies that were out there. So anyway, Stingers and Spores. I thought it was a great read. Again, not a review. I haven't played it. Haven't read all the mechanics and see how the mechanics interact to make sure that they're strong. That's usually Eric's forte. So hope you enjoyed the video, and leave me a note in the comments whether you've played it, whether you thought this seems like an interesting setting to you, or just what you liked about what we're doing here. So talk to you later. This was Carl. Look at the bubbles, do the stuff.
So gross.
Thanks.
It's a savage world, strange as a wind war. It's a savage world. My sex to